I think people rush because they just want to get through the feeling, that heavy, devastated feeling. And so they rush through the separation and the divorce and moving on to another relationship. And it's like, whoa, you just need to allow yourself a moment to actually feel everything.
Welcome to the Heavy Pages podcast, a guiding light for women facing the paralyzing challenges of an unwanted separation. If you're feeling frozen by the weight of heartbreak or the uncertainty of a crumbling relationship, you're not alone. I'm Josie, your host, and a separation survival specialist, because I've been where you are, overwhelmed, emotionally stuck, and unsure of what lies ahead. But here's the truth: healing and empowerment are within your reach. Together, we'll shatter the chains of paralysis, embrace this journey, and pave the way to your new future. So it's time to step forward, find your strength, and rewrite your story, because the pages of life can be heavy, but you don't have to turn them alone. Now, before we start today's episode, please consider taking a moment to click that subscribe button. And with that, here we go. Hello, and a warm welcome to today's chapter checkup session, where we will be hearing from another courageous woman as she shares her transformative journey from devastated to divorce. And we'll be using the 5 chapters of my program as the guide. If you're curious about these chapters and how they align with your personal journey, don't forget to visit heavypagespodcast.com for your free chapter checklist. And with that, here's today's interview. Okay, welcome. Today we have Michelle with us. Thank you, Michelle, for being here.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm excellent. So thank you for being willing to share your story with us. And first, I just want to confirm that whether you are married, separated, or divorced.
So I'm separated, still working through the process to finalize our divorce. Yes.
Okay. And let's see. How long were you married? Or how long have you been married, right?
So we were dating for 8 years before we decided to get married. So in total, we're somewhere around, I believe, 27 years together. So a lifetime, a good chunk of our maturing lives.
Wow, that is a lot. So, whose decision was it to separate?
Well, I often say it was my decision, but there were so many conversations that we had where we kind of dropped hints to one another. But as far as the final decision, that was mine.
Okay, so working through the From Devastated to Divorce guide, chapter 1 is either subconsciously aware or blissfully unaware. Would you about problems in your marriage or that it might end and things like that? So how do you feel you fall on one of those?
I think I was subconsciously aware for a large portion
Right.
of our married life, and in fact, maybe even dating life. Um, it always was just kind of hiding under the quiet with all of the busyness of life, of raising kids and responsibilities. So there wasn't too much time that we had actually to even focus on the health, the real issues. We were just trying to grow up, mature, and build a life.
Gotcha. That happens to a lot of us. You just got to survive. And that's kind of why I say it's blissfully unaware. It doesn't mean that you're living in bliss. It just means that you're so busy doing everything that you're supposed to do in life to continue to prosper and whatever that you don't sometimes just don't even put the focus there. So that makes sense. So then let's talk about chapter 2, blindsided and devastated. Since you kind of were both kind of in agreement about the separation and you kind of decided to take that next step, would you say that you had any of the experience of the blindsided and devastated? Maybe not the blindsided. How about the devastated part?
I think I was devastated even by my own decision.
Okay, fair.
To really realize that there was no more opportunity to pretend. that things were working or they were okay or they were going to fix themselves. So I think I was devastated by really making the decision that this is it, and consciously deciding that I will no longer be attached. Not just that you're not with someone, but the all the other things that come along with it. I won't have anyone to have conversations with at night. I won't be able to have a buddy. Those are the things I think that were more devastating than the actual choice not to be together.
I would assume that as many years as you guys had together, you had a vision for your future, and that's something that you have to kind of reckon with. Also, is this vision of us, retiring and traveling the country, or all these things that you might have put in what you imagined your life and future would be. You have to come to grips with also.
You have to come to grips with, and now you're going to have to rewrite that story. And this time you're writing it on your own, not with the input of anyone else. So
Right.
some of that devastation is just realizing how much power you have and how many big decisions are to be made.
Right. That can be scary. Having a wide open future is a scary idea for
It
sure.
can be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. After you how long have you been in the separation process?
So, funny enough, I knew that in 2019 there was going to be a major change, and that was going to be me orchestrating the separation. I did not know that COVID would happen in 2020. So, regardless of that, I knew that I wanted to move forward because even though it was a really weird time to be making decisions to be alone, like I don't know who does that. The world's on its axis, and who makes the decision now to do it on their own. But
Right.
I wanted to stay true to the massive changes that were forced upon me, and I wanted this to be one that I had control over. So in a weird sense, COVID kind of made me decide that I wanted to have some level of control, and this was the level of control, which is to continue on that journey, that path that I knew full well was the right path.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah.
And how did your soon to be ex feel about your decision? I mean, I know you said you kind of were on the same path, but how did he react? Is he like, "Cool, see ya," or
No, actually, it was really it was interesting to kind of watch it unfold. So I had a conversation. I said, we've talked about this. The kids are older. We don't really need to do this. We're all both established. And I think he thought I was joking. And I said to him, like, this, like, I'm serious. I know we've talked about it before, but it was never the right time. The kids going to school, them being in the house, and you actually have to go through this really horrible process of like pulling it apart. And I didn't want to pull it apart in front of the audience of our kids. So when I said, this is it, and we need to start thinking about these next steps, I had to really impress upon him that I was dead serious. But I also I knew for myself that I had to be prepared because, which was atypical in our relationship. If I was going to get divorced, it was going to be me to do the work, and so I had to be also prepared to have that much emotional fortitude to move forward and the time to orchestrate this endeavor with my work schedule and everything else and the world. I had to carve out some time for this,
right.
monumental decision to happen. So yeah, it was a little, and I think even as we go through, because I endeavored to still remain friends, and I think that was something that perhaps he wanted but didn't expect and wasn't sure how to interpret. So we always had to go back to this place of we're still on the same path. Nothing has changed. We're just being cordial. We're just doing what we're doing, which is co-parenting. We're taking care of the things that we have that are joint responsibilities between us. It doesn't mean things are going back to quote unquote normal.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
And that was a tough thing. That was it was confusing, not just tough. It was confusing for me. It was confusing for him. We really had to sit down and say, okay, well, if you want to go out somewhere and you don't have someone to go with, are you allowed to invite me? Yes. okay, so now we need to figure out what that looks like. And we need to remind each other that's not a change of the trajectory of where we're headed.
Right.
It's just us. I mean, we pretty much grew up together. So we're just accustomed to the other one being there.
Right. And I definitely suggest and think it's a good idea if you can to stay friendly or friends with the ex. It doesn't automatically mean, even though I know some people go through some really tragic relationships and they don't ever want to see the ex again. They hate the ex, but it can be like that. You grew apart. It's not that you hate each other. It's just that the lives don't align anymore, and that's okay. That if that's possible, that's great. I tried to do that with my ex, especially while my son was younger, because he was little, and there were things we were all going to have to do together, and I didn't want it to be uncomfortable or him to have to come to one side of the room to talk to me and go to the other side of the room to talk to his dad. I didn't want him to have to deal with that sort of thing. And after I worked through, chapter 2, I didn't exactly hate him. I might have thought I did in the beginning, but I didn't, so we could work as friends. But yes, it's important to be clear on, we are friends. It doesn't mean that I don't not want, you have to be in the headspace that you don't misinterpret, like you said, that you actually have those very important conversations to be clear that, yeah, we can go out to watch a movie together. It doesn't mean now we have to hold hands, and it doesn't mean that we're now back together. It's just us going out, spending time together, because we still could enjoy each other's company, even if we're not going to work as a couple.
It's funny you say that. Maybe you could have heard the smile in my voice because, yes, there were moments where we're out together and you lean over to give the other one a kiss and you're like, oh, okay. No, we're not supposed to do that. Are we crossing a line? So there were so many opportunities for us to rewrite the script of what it meant to be divorced. And I mean, or even separated. In my professional life, this is what I do. But when it's now in your own backyard or your own home,
right?
It's an interesting dance, and everybody's giving their input. My care professionals were cut it dry, don't have any contact, and girlfriends were saying this or that, and
Right.
people who had ulterior motives, wanting to date you, always waiting for you to be free. Like, you really have to wade through all of this. And to your point, did I ever, the whole comment of, did I ever hate that person? There were moments that I didn't love. I didn't love some of the
Right.
behavior, and I didn't like the things that we had to kind of muddle through to get to the clearer water. Um, but there is an opportunity to come out of it civil and to still care for one another and all those other wonderful things. But unfortunately, there's no easy way to get through it.
Right.
If you're trying to make things as pleasant as possible, like, I give you kudos because you're doing your best. But there are going to be points and things that are brought up that just have you beside yourself and not really loving, looking at the other person. And that's just a part of, separating. That's just a
Exactly.
part of it.
Exactly. And for some people, you can do the friend thing, but you can't expect to do the friend thing right away. For some people, you need to separate, go your own way for months, sometimes even years, and then you can come back together and be able to hang out and even, be friends. But if you need that time apart, it's absolutely normal. It's absolutely part of the process. So don't feel bad that, hey, those people can be friendly. Why can't I? You can, but everybody's going to happen in a different way and in a different timeline. That's just how it is. And some people can't at all.
100%. Everyone's process is going to be completely different and unique to them. And that's acceptable. So no one's going to be able to give you the Cole's Notes short version of how to separate effectively, because I don't think anyone's ever done it the way that they had envisioned. It just landed that way and they're okay with it. So they've moved on.
Exactly, exactly. So let me ask you about chapter 3, which is Better, Stronger, Loved You. Do you feel that in the course of this very long relationship, marriage, do you feel like you were able to continue to be who you were, not to really lose your self worth or value? Or did you feel like you spent any sort of time in trying to build yourself up, get yourself, love yourself, and things like that?
So now that I'm so far on the other side of this relationship and I reflect back on even during my marriage, it was really important for me to maintain who I was. A little bit challenging when you're raising kids and doing the other, managing the other distractions, but I was pretty authentic to who is Michelle. And but I will say that through the separation piece and navigating that, I've been able to recognize that I did lose pieces of myself. There were things that I had to rebuild in terms of my self-esteem and what am I capable of. And I think there's always this thing, especially when you're in as long of a relationship as I have been in, that you're always wondering, okay, will I find another partner? And I don't think I know anyone who doesn't think that, whether they admit it or not.
Right.
But I really wanted to focus on, okay, what's important for me and how can I be my happiest self, my best self, find the environment where I really am going to thrive. Because I mean, I'm a firm believer in that energy and that vibration will attract the right person.
Right.
If I am in a place where I'm insecure, unhappy, angry, vulnerable, well, that will also attract a person, but is that the type of person that I want?
Probably not.
And the answer is no. We've done that. Let's do something different.
Right.
And so, being very intentional, sorry, about how I show up every day, not just my physical appearance. You know, most people think that if they dress the right way that's going to attract the person. It was more my energy, and it was more about being okay being alone, so that I didn't have that pressure to really go out and find someone, force feed or force a round peg into a square hole just to bridge a gap.
Right. Right. That's that I'm actually right now reading through my journal entries because my podcast is also journal entries that I've written around during the time of my separation. And right now I've been reading about this relationship that I jumped into because I obviously didn't understand the process then. And I was just around this person that was not the one I needed, wasn't giving me what I wanted, but I just kept holding on and kept holding on. And what I was doing was hurting myself more because he wasn't fulfilling what I needed, which was tons of attention because I was broken and he couldn't do that for me. But then because he didn't do that for me, my self-worth was, tanking even more. It was a complete disaster. And that's exactly the thing that where, like we're saying, chapter 3 comes in, learning to love yourself, learning to be okay with yourself, learning that you can be enough. An extra person, another person, a partner is a bonus and it's a great thing. But the fact of the matter is that if you do the work and you can be alone and be okay, be in the movies and be sitting at home in peace and feeling okay, like nothing's missing, then exactly what you said, that energy is what's going to allow for the right person to come in. Because the other way, you're just like somebody, anybody, and anybody will show up, but that is
They
not what you want.
certain, yeah, they will. It's amazing to see, if you are an observer to your life. So you go somewhere, you're just watching things kind of move around. Who comes towards you? What kind of language did they use? How do you respond? It's almost like an out of body experience. I've been using this time almost like a science experiment. So who's gonna approach me based on what circumstance, what environment, what energy are they getting? And then asking them, well, what made you want to come up and talk to me? And what I will accept and won't. So it's funny, having gone out of the country for 10 days, I have experienced a different type of energy that I was not accustomed to, because I tend to be a person who really enjoys work. I can stay all day long working and never take a vacation, and I'm perfectly fine with it. So when I now went to a completely different culture and experienced that, people were coming up to me that normally I would, where I come from, men typically are shy. They're waiting
Right.
for the perfect, like, everything has to line up before they talk to you, because the fear of rejection here is immense. But when I traveled abroad, I realized that people aren't as afraid. They're going to approach a strong woman. They're going to approach a woman who's traveling on her own or happens to be by herself. And it's not throwing them off. They don't need the buffer of other company to be there. And I really, really, really respect that. That's a huge thing for me. That sense of confidence and independence. And that's something that's not, if someone's your equal that way, then you can both operate as individuals coming together, as opposed to leaning on each other for that level of confidence.
That's right. That's a perfect way to put it. Exactly. It's supposed to be, I had a friend who once told me something about, when they say a relationship is 50-50 and whatever and things like that. And that but what she said, and it made so much sense, I'm sure someone told her, was that you should both be 100 together. It's not like you're 50 and you need that other person to be your other
Yeah.
50. You should be 100 and they're 100, and together it's great, but you're not waiting for them to fill your gap, and they're not looking for you to fill something for them. You're two whole healthy people.
And to get together, you are a power couple, because really you're at 200 at that point.
Exactly.
You actually have more to give because you are completely full. You don't feel depleted
Right.
because you still have some in your reserve. And that is something, if I look in retrospect to life, that's like should be a life skills course in school. We should understand that we're walking out the door as whole people, and to understand the importance of having boundaries, and finding those people who make us feel the same way when we met them as when we leave. Not depleted, not more. I mean, those are bonuses if you
Sure.
feel more excited, but you should never walk away from a person feeling depleted
Right.
and then go
Right.
back for more.
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely right. So now that you are basically in chapter 4, which is it's over, now what? You're sure the marriage is over. You're okay with that.
Yeah.
It's time for the now what. What does now what seem like for you? What is the now what that you would have to do?
So I have come back from holiday in beautiful Antigua. I think I'm on
Nice.
day 4 now, and I'm already trying to go away in the next few days to another part of the world. I always knew that traveling was going to be a part of my future. I
Okay.
love culture. I love people that come from different places just to get a different perspective. And I love language, and food is just an added bonus. So traveling for me is where I'm headed.
Okay.
I've built a career where I can work wherever I go, even before remote careers were a thing.
Nice.
So I just want to see what the world has to offer. I've
Right.
spent an entire lifetime in the country that I was born in, and now I'd just like to see really what's out there. And maybe I'll have one of those experiences that you watch in a movie, but maybe not. Maybe
Right.
just the exploration is enough.
Right.
Anything else that happens is just a bonus. But I do know clearly, everyone says, well, what do you want? Well, I don't know if I know what I want, but I surely know what I do not.
That's a huge step.
And that is an important piece.
Right.
And maybe what I would have said I wanted would have limited me. So I'd rather not have a job description for this particular job. I'd rather just
Right.
free fall it and see what
Right.
becomes. But so long as I'm healthy, safe, and secure, those are really the focuses. And I'm really enjoying figuring out who I am and what's important for me, and still, having a relationship with my ex, and I always want the best for him as well, and hopefully he can find the same. But right now, at this particular point in my life, it really is about me.
Right. And
Yeah.
so are you not in a hurry to make the divorce official, or is it just that the timeline, like, is it like just a paperwork thing, or is there anything specific that's keeping you from that last, from the official divorce?
No. So I had to do some other things. So I am an atypical Virgo. Things happen on a timeline. So the paperwork is now being completed. So I wanted to take this trip that I just did. And so now that that's done, I'm moving forward with all the rest. Things have been
Okay.
done, but this is the biggest piece. This is the real boulder in solidifying things, because we had to look at properties and taxes related to the dissolution of those and how that was all going to work.
Right.
And so we needed a little bit of a buffer, kind of from an emotional standpoint. To, okay, we've got through that. It really is exhausting. People, I think, don't understand the many steps that need to be taken and how they are
Right.
energy draining. So rather than
Right.
rush and make very um, bad decisions, we took it slow, or I took it slow, wanted to get certain things done, see what the implications would be for, of course, my kids, because I need to think of their future. And now getting this part of the finalization done is really just focusing on me. So no, there's nothing holding me back. I haven't changed my mind. It's funny, we had this conversation. Even if whatever, say, I never say never. If the world shifted, changed, did whatever it was going to do, and we decided we were going to get back together in some capacity, I still would want to move forward with the divorce.
Okay.
If I ever were to consider this, it has to be something where we are not tied to each other. We know enough about each other to know how we lean and how we move, and whether or not we've done the work that needs to be done for us to really represent the 100% independently that we own.
Right.
And so I wouldn't want to walk back into that kind of a scenario. So the divorce is like, it is a full stop.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
so something that you mentioned, which is true, which is why in my guide I put chapter 4. Chapter 4 is because, like you said, making those decisions. I mean, it's chapter 4 is a very hands-on. Split up assets. Let's decide, child support, child custody, all of these, things that you have together. That is something that you don't want to do when you're still devastated and blindsided, or when you're still trying to figure out who you are. Because if you don't have the self-worth, you might let stuff slide that you shouldn't, just to be nice to the other person, and you'll regret that later. So it is important to do exactly like you said. I'm going to work all of this stuff. It's not a race. Don't let anybody rush you. And if you're rushing yourself, slow down, because it's important that you're in the right headspace to deal with the actual physical part of splitting a marriage. It's
Yeah.
difficult, like you said. And if you don't have the energy because you're still heartbroken, devastated, or have no self-esteem, now that's not the time to work on this.
Absolutely. I think people rush because they just want to get through the feeling, that heavy, devastated feeling. And so they rush through the separation and the divorce and moving on to another relationship. And it's like, whoa, you just need to allow yourself a moment
Right.
to actually feel everything. And that's oftentimes what we're trying to avoid, but you're going to feel it one way or another. Better
Right.
off feeling it while you're alone, can process it. You're not in another relationship where you're confused. Did I do the right thing? And now someone's heart is already tied up in a relationship with you, and it's just adding fuel to a fire.
Right.
I've always been the type of person that will take things slower, knowing that if I say it's going to happen, it will come to fruition. So I don't ever feel like, I'm telling an untruth on myself. I think sometimes people are like, I want to get a divorce, and then they say they want to, and then it takes longer, so they feel like they're actually lying on themselves. No, it just takes time.
Right.
And the more people you tell, they're wondering, well, they're looking at their watch saying, well, didn't you say a year ago you were going to, it's not that. It's not that kind of thing. It is
Right.
something where you have to be very intentional, deliberate, considerate of all parties, including yourself. And of course, like you said, some people say, oh, we'll take everything. I don't want anything. Really? In this world?
Right. Right.
Where it's where I live, we have major housing crisis. You want to
Abs-
know that we've got winter, so you don't have the luxury of like sleeping on the beach.
no, that's absolutely
So
right.
you
Yes.
really want to
Yeah.
make sure everyone walks away with a fighting chance to survive. And
Absolutely.
so long as that's the case, then everyone can, design their own path because we're all capable and able, or should grow to be.
Right.
And I think that allows us to be better humans, companions, friends after the fact.
Right. Right. I
Yeah.
agree 100% on that. So we'll move now to chapter 5, which is divorced and beyond. And you're on your way there, and you feel like your beyond is going to include a lot of nice traveling, and possibly, when you're ready, maybe an island guy.
Well, it's interesting. As soon as the universe is very quick to pick up on your energy, so as soon as I said, okay, that's it, I'm looking for, someone who kind of fits this description. I've always had I don't know, a real love for. I refer to them as silverbacks. So, an older man. I've always had a preference. And as soon as I said that, one of my favorite watering holes that I go to do work and have a tea, and I met a gentleman, and he came to me right away, and I was like, whoa, no one ever approaches me. Men are usually, oh well, she looks like she's busy. Okay, I won't. Okay, and he just came and started talking with me. And funny enough, just before this meeting, I was at my favorite watering hole, and he showed up there again. So I
Oh,
said, okay, if nothing else, it's someone to talk to go hang out, have a coffee and a tea, and that's the way things are supposed to start, right?
absolutely.
Gradually. So my world and my focus is very positive, very open. I'm not sure where things will go, but I'm okay with that. And I'll tell you, as a Virgo, maybe this is age speaking, because Virgos are not like that. We're not a seat of the pants kind of folk.
Right.
But in that, what I'm gaining is that sense of adventure and curiosity and spontaneity. And it's really nice to have that at this point in my life, where before I had to be very serious about making money, raising amazing contributors to society, and a lot
Right.
of responsibility to give back to society. And now I'm giving back to myself. So yeah, the opportunities are there, and thank goodness I've built the kind of life that I always wanted to have. And so regardless, that doesn't go away.
Right. And that's excellent. And honestly, nobody gets married thinking they're going to get a divorce, obviously. But like you just said, once it happens and you are there, I know that for many of us, me including, I had blinders on. All I could think was, my life is over. I'm done. I was, I don't know, 33 years old, I think. I mean, and I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. There's nothing, left to live for. This is terrible. But when you work past it, you realize that there is so much more that you can do. There's a life that you never even imagined that you were going to be able to live, and now you get to experience that. Okay, that's not exactly what you thought was going to happen, but the fact that now you have this whole other opportunity, and with, the wisdom that you're coming into it with, it's a whole new amazing chapter of your life that it's pretty amazing. Yes, it hurt getting there and it sucked getting there, but the opportunities are pretty darn amazing.
I will tell you, I have learned through this transformation so much about myself, about humanity, about friends and family. And despite the horrific heartache that this process took, I really would not have changed it. We really have had to face ourselves, and I've learned things about myself. And I even say to people, like, I can be really nasty. Like, I never even knew I could be this nasty. And sometimes that comes out in you just because you're so frustrated, and you don't have the words to articulate how you're feeling. And a lot of how you're feeling is like devastating. It reminds you of like childhood. If you have had any childhood wounds, they all come up to the surface. It's not being loved, not being accepted, being alone, the last person picked, all of those things.
Right.
And so I've always been a huge supporter of therapy and counseling. So, and it's a world I practice in. But as I said before, you can practice all day long. When it's in your own home, it's a really different experience.
That is
And
very true.
so you're just trying to take from this, and I hope everyone does, an opportunity to learn and grow. And now my phrase for everyone in imparting any engagement is, I wish you much discomfort. Because in that discomfort, you grow and you expand. And that's where all the greatness comes from, being on this planet and living as humans through all these lessons that life is here to teach us. Through
Wow.
discomfort is how we grow.
Absolutely. So it's scary and painful, but don't shy away from it, because when you come out the other side, you're going to be amazed.
Truly.
So, wow, Michelle, I really appreciate you sharing your story and being able to hopefully help other women that are listening and are in a similar situation, feel a little more hope and maybe a little less fear, and know that they can do it. It's doable. It's difficult, but there is another side to it all.
Certainly.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to be it for this episode. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can always find me on Instagram at heavy_pages_podcast. And if you found this episode interesting, please consider clicking on that 5-star rating and following so you are notified when the next episode drops. As always, thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the pages of life can be heavy, but you don't have to turn them alone.